That's not what we started to teach, which was that every baby is, I don't know, let's not even put it on the birth certificate. That's what they wanted.
Were we teaching that?
Yes, we
When
were.
were we teaching that?
Teaching it. It was a law here in California. See,
To teach what?
Don't put on the birth certificate. We'll see.
Bill Maher is laying it out clearly. He's breaking with the left, and it's more striking than many anticipated. Sure, he sparred with them for years, but few expected him to reach this point. Now he's saying what others have only whispered. The left has lost its sense of direction, and if it doesn't course correct soon, its remaining influence could fade permanently. Buckle up, this one lands hard.
To admit this country is not as mature as it thinks it is. We elected Obama, and clearly the country freaked out. We're still living in that freak out. We are not as progressed and evolved and intelligent as we think we are, because we keep freaking out about this stuff.
Well,
you know?
The left freak out too. The left freaked out about a lot of too.
What did they freak out about?
Gender, race, parenthood, schools, homelessness, crime, the border, education. Like we stopped being a scientific people.
Maher begins by outlining all the reasons he's finally breaking with the left, but he saves his strongest point for last.
In his view,
the left has stopped truly respecting science. Whether you agree or not, he argues, it's hard to ignore when some suggest that biological realities can be dismissed or that identity can be changed simply by declaration. At a certain point, he says, it's impossible to pretend that logic still guides the conversation. Ultimately, he calls it what he sees it as, a rejection of basic scientific principles.
Like, it's not scientific.
But the left certainly stayed scientific.
No, they didn't.
Why not?
Because they think gender that they went way too far with, that's not scientific.
Maher makes it crystal clear that he believes the left focus on gender identity played a major role in their election losses. In his view, they pushed the conversation so far beyond common sense that it entered territory ordinary Americans neither asked for nor supported. Rather than focusing on practical priorities like the economy, public safety, and education, the left devoted energy to redefining biological terms and demanding universal compliance. Maher argues this overreach didn't just alienate moderates, it drove voters away in large numbers. By turning a niche ideological debate into a nationwide mandate, he says the left essentially set itself up for defeat, and the election results made that starkly evident.
That's not what we started to teach, which was that every baby is, I don't know, let's not even put it on the birth certificate. That's what they wanted.
Were we teaching that?
Yes, we were.
When were we teaching that?
Teaching it. It was a law here in California. See,
to teach what?
Don't put on the birth certificate. We'll see. Now we've passed that period. Now
I'm sorry, I don't remember that. I mean,
I know because it doesn't get in the blue sky bubble.
Wait a minute, I'm not just blue sky.
I really think that's a lot of it. Is that some of this stuff doesn't get in to everybody's media.
Now, the left seems to be turning on the very ideas they once defended with unwavering conviction. The same voices that once treated these beliefs as absolute truths are suddenly acting as if they never said a word.
Today, they conveniently
ignore their past statements, as if the internet and history don't exist.
But anyone paying attention knows
the truth. Just a few years ago, they zealously championed gender identity debates, framing dissent as a moral failing. Now, with political tides shifting and backlash unavoidable, they're scrambling to distance themselves from the positions they once so passionately promoted.
Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chávez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century or any century, a mess.
Another reason Maher says he's breaking with the left is its sudden embrace of socialism. He argues that socialism isn't just flawed in theory, it's a political disaster waiting to happen. In his view, leaning into these ideas doesn't energize the Democratic Party. It sets it back, threatening whatever momentum it still has. Americans have seen enough examples around the world to understand the risks, and most aren't willing to gamble their future on it. Maher believes the left is promoting an ideology that voters simply don't trust, and instead of learning from the backlash, they double down. To him, that's a sure path to political self-destruction.
It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
New York seems convinced it can reinvent socialism, polish it, fix its flaws, and somehow succeed where every other attempt has failed.
Lawmakers act
as if they've discovered a smarter, cleaner version of the ideology, one that won't collapse under its own weight. But Maher isn't buying it. He argues that New York is heading straight into the same trap countless nations have fallen into throughout history. No matter how it's packaged, he says, socialism always produces the same outcomes: economic strain, bloated government control, and a gradual erosion of individual freedom. New York isn't rewriting history, it's repeating it, and the ending has already been played out time and again.
For 66 years, Playboy magazine was also a fact of American life. Sears sold your father a mattress, and Playboy was what he hid under it. It was a surefire product. Pictures of and then 25 cartoons about Santa Claus. Plus real journalism. You could read an interview with Carter while enjoying photos of Bush. But then it started messing around with the formula. Like the Democratic Party, Playboy decided they didn't need straight men anymore.
Maher places the blame for what he calls the woke virus squarely on the Democratic Party. In his view, the party turned away from the real-world concerns of its core voters' jobs, safety, affordability, and basic stability, and instead immersed itself in ideological battles most Americans never asked for. Rather than focusing on policies that could genuinely improve lives, Democrats became fixated on gender identity debates, elevating them to the center of modern politics. Maher argues this obsession didn't stay confined to politics. It seeped into every corner of American culture. Even iconic brands once rooted in mainstream culture weren't spared. He points to Playboy magazine as an example, highlighting how it shifted from its original identity into a platform reflecting the same woke messaging dominating the political left. For Maher, this cultural shift illustrates just how far the Democratic Party has strayed from its roots, prioritizing fringe ideological agendas over everyday concerns. In the process, they didn't just weaken themselves politically. They reshaped institutions in ways that alienated the very people they claimed to represent.
They put transgender women and gay men on the cover, and predictably sales, like their subscribers, collapsed. The staff began using terms like intersectionality, positivity, and privileging, and in response, Playboy readers used terms like no thanks, get the out of here, and bye-bye. At one point, Playboy, yes, Playboy, even dropped the which is like cigar aficionado announcing, we're getting rid of the cigars. It went from entertainment for men to re-education for nobody, and enlightened their way to unpopularity. Meanwhile, Kim Kardashian posed for another magazine and broke the internet with her
Just like the Democratic Party, any institution that eagerly jumped on the woke bandwagon ended up paying a steep price. Maher points out that embracing these ideological trends wasn't just a cultural gamble, it became a financial disaster for many major brands. Companies that once led their industries suddenly alienated loyal customers, diluted their brand identity, and strayed from the values that originally made them successful. For some, the consequences were swift and severe. Revenues dropped, dropped, stock prices fell, and longtime patrons walked away. Playboy, once an iconic cultural force, lost the audience that had sustained it for decades after attempting a woke rebrand. Budweiser faced one of the most dramatic consumer backlashes in modern corporate history after leaning into controversial social messaging. Even Sears, once a retail giant, suffered by prioritizing cultural virtues signaling over the fundamentals that had kept its business alive. Maher argues that these companies didn't just miscalculate, they misunderstood their customers entirely. In chasing ideological approval, they abandoned the very people who supported them, and the market responded without mercy.
Sometimes you got to give the people what they want. But for some weird reason, it's apparently tempting for some people to not do that, because even Cracker Barrel recently decided that they felt a little embarrassed that it was so popular with bumpkins who salivate at the sight of an old wagon wheel screwed to the wall. So they changed it to this, which got them no new customers while pissing off the old ones. It reminded me of when Chuck Schumer said in 2016 that for every blue-collar Democrat we lose in Western Pennsylvania, we're going to pick up 2 moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Philly, Ohio, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Yeah, how'd that work out?
While Trump was on the campaign trail winning over Americans with concrete policies on the economy, national security, and job growth, the left was focused on an entirely different agenda. Instead of addressing the pressing issues affecting everyday voters, they spent their energy educating the public on topics like gender identity and the participation of trans women in sports. While these debates mattered to a niche audience, they were far removed from the immediate concerns of most Americans, who were worried about paychecks, rising crime, and the state of the nation. Maher points out that this disconnect in priorities played a major role in shaping the election outcome. By dwelling on abstract cultural debates while sidelining core issues, the left unintentionally handed Trump a decisive advantage. The result was a landslide victory that left the left scrambling to understand why their progressive message, when they saw as morally and culturally vital, failed to resonate with the broader electorate. For Maher, it serves as a stark warning about the dangers of losing touch with reality.
At least Cracker Barrel had the sense to immediately say, "Oh, sorry," and put the sling blades back on the wall. Democrats don't seem to be doing that. They still seem to want to be that upscale store that impresses celebrities. Anybody remember Barney's? It was this store in New York that started in the 1920s, as a discount clothing joint on unfashionable, grimy 7th Avenue, a place where their customers, the working man, could get a decent suit at a very reasonable price. I remember going there in 1993 to get my wardrobe for a new show Comedy Central was launching called Politically Incorrect.
Maher argues that the Democratic National Committee should have faced its recent election losses head-on, learning from the mistakes that cost them crucial races. Instead, he says, the party seems to be doubling down on the very strategies that drove voters away. Maher finds this baffling. How can a political organization rejected by the electorate for overemphasizing woke ideology respond by embracing an even more controversial agenda like socialism to him? It defies basic political logic. Rather than reconnecting with the voters whose trust they lost, the party appears intent on pushing them further away. Maher sees this stubbornness not merely as a political miscalculation, but as a deeper disconnect from the realities that matter to everyday Americans. While ordinary citizens worry about jobs, inflation, and security, the DNC seems increasingly absorbed in ideological experiments with little popular support. Maher warns that this signals a troubling pattern. Instead of learning from defeat, the left continues to advance policies that risk repeating the same mistakes, eroding credibility and diminishing future electoral prospects. In his view, the left focus on woke culture, gender identity debates, and socialism has alienated voters and weakened both the Democratic Party and major institutions. Meanwhile, Trump concentrated on tangible issues that mattered to everyday Americans, while the left chased ideological battles that few supported, costing them elections and credibility. Unless the party pivots toward practical policies and reconnects with its base, Maher cautions, it risks repeating these costly errors, leaving its future uncertain. That wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.